Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. So I am back. I want to say hello and welcome in. I'm going to give some folks some time to get on in here. But I'm excited about this because this lesson was not one, well, it was one that I had been working on, but my original plan was to do this as a Saturday Bible study. You all know that I try as much as possible and as best as possible to do a Bible study on Saturday, either a Bible study or a Let's Talk session. But tonight, I'm excited because, I feel like I have this word ready for tonight, and I'm excited to bring it forth. So we're just going to wait on a couple of more people to get on in here. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to just try to get my life while I wait on everybody to come on in. And tonight we'll be talking about the cost of disobedience. Ooh. Now, originally I had a different title for this message. It was going to be that God is a God of covenant. However, that same truth is going to fall into the lesson as a whole, the cost of disobedience. So, I'm excited, and we're going to go ahead and get started here in just a moment. I hope everyone had a wonderful Tuesday. I won't say that we're halfway through the week, but I will say we're almost halfway through the week, right? As of tomorrow. Tomorrow is hump day, yes, for everybody who is ready for the weekend, usually by about Monday evening, right? It's Tuesday. We're almost halfway through the week. Praise God. So, I'm going to give some people some time to get on in here. And if you all see me looking down or you hear this, that's just me going back and forth between my notes and the word, trying to get everything prepped. Good evening. Come on in, everybody. Hello. Good evening, Sabrina. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining in this evening. All right. And anyone who is watching this, it is my sincerest hope that you will share, invite people, because I think that all of us need this word. The title of tonight's Bible study is going to be the cost of disobedience. And the reason why this is so important is because a lot of us are missing blessings and we're wondering why certain things are not happening for us, but we don't understand that it's very possible that we are being disobedient in some areas, and that's why we're missing out on whatever it is that we're praying about. So it's important that we get this word out because we need to get our blessings. We need to get our blessings. We need to get our blessings, folks. All right. So now that we have a couple of people coming on in, again, the title of tonight's Bible study is going to be, drum roll, the cost of disobedience. Right? Now, disobedience is not something we like to talk about, and cost is definitely not something we like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about sacrifice. Nobody likes to talk about cost, because the truth is that we look at Christianity like a gimme, like it's, I don't know if any of you, I'm a 90s baby, so listen, who remembers Barney? And everybody remembers how Barney had this big old magic bag, right, that he could just keep pulling from. Well, a lot of times that's how we look at Christianity. We look at God like, gimme, but we never ever stop to think what it is that we could do for God, or what we are supposed to be doing according to His word. So we're going to go ahead and get into the study, and good evening to everyone that's joining in. Come on in as you will. So we're going to be studying this evening. Again, the title of this Bible study is the cost of disobedience. Now, again, I was going to title it God is a God of covenant. However, it all is going to mush together. So we're going to talk about the cost of disobedience. And for anyone who brought their word to the live tonight, we will be studying out of two different places, okay? So first and foremost, we will be studying out of Judges chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Again, that's Judges chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. And then we will flip on over to Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 1 through 5. And again, that's Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 1 through 5. And then we'll get over to Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 10. All right? So I know I got a lot of scriptures. I understand. But just stay with me, because at the end, I'm going to pull it all together with the help of the Holy Spirit. All right? Hopefully, we all understand this word. And I hope that you will be blessed by it. So first and foremost, we are going to talk about covenant. It's very important that we understand covenant as it pertains to our obedience and to our relationship with God, because one of the things about God is that he is a covenant God. And what that means is that when he gives his word, or he makes a promise, or he, first and foremost, a covenant is an agreement, okay? It's an agreement, a contract, a promise. It's God giving his word. It's God making a promise. It's him entering into an agreement with you that, there is something that he is going to provide or bring to fruition for you, all right? So we got to understand that a covenant is God's promise to us. That's his word. That's his bond. That is his agreement to do something for us or provide something. But what we miss a lot of times is that on the other end of that covenant, we too have a part, right? So I'm single, but how many people are married? And you know that when you get married, you enter into a contract, right? A binding contract with your spouse that says, I, such and such, do thee, promise to do this or do that or whatever. So you make your vows and you stand before, we call it a covenant. You stand before the church and God, and you make a covenant, a vow, a promise, an agreement, a contract between you and your spouse to be husband and wife, and to uphold all of the values and all of the standards of that agreement, right? So that's what a covenant is, and we got to understand that God is a covenant God. Now, what that means when I say that God is a covenant God, that means that once he gives his word, or he makes a promise, or he enters into an agreement, that he is always going to keep that word. He will never default. He will never go back. He is not an Indian giver. He is not a man that he should lie, according to Numbers 23, verse 11. God is a covenant God. And so when he says to you, I will do this for you, he's going to do it. And it's important that we understand that, because we are so wishy-washy and flippy-floppy. But when God says, I'm going to do this for you, he is going to do it. A prime example of that is if we go ahead, and again, I want, for the people that are just coming on in, I do want to repeat what we'll be studying out of tonight. So we're going to be studying out of Judges chapter 2, verse 1 through 3. Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 1 through 5. And then we're going to take a look also at Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 10. So real quick, and I'm going to double back, but I want to point this out. If we are looking at Judges chapter 2, verse 1, and I'm going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to put emphasis on a certain part. God says, okay, well, the word says, and an angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt, and have brought you unto the land which I swear unto your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And it's so important that we understand that, okay? So once again, the word says that we see right there in Judges chapter 2, verse 1, God says, I will never break my covenant to you. Now, that's important, because that's God saying, no matter what happens, I'm not going to ever break my promise to you. I'm not going to ever break my word to you. But, okay, what we have to look at, what was our part of that covenant, because God had, now first of all, I want to preface that we're speaking about the children of Israel, who we know just could not get it right. I mean, God's grace is sufficient and his mercies are new every day, but how many times did the children of Israel get it wrong? How many times did God have to tell them the same thing over and over again, and they just kept on messing up? Now, what is it that kept costing them? We're about to find out. It's their disobedience, okay? So we're talking about the cost of disobedience tonight. Now we see, God said, hey, I'm here for it. I'm not going to break my promise. I will never break my covenant with you, meaning I will do what I said I'm going to do. I'm not going to deviate from it. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to go back on my word. You have my word that I will not break my covenant to you. Now let's watch and see what happens, okay? So this is going to be the first part of our study. We are in Judges chapter 2. We're going to go through verse 1 through 3. Okay, so after he says, I will never break my covenant to you, Judges chapter 2, verse 2, and ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this? So I want to pause right there. Now, what was our end of that covenant? The children of Israel, what was their part? Their part was that you shall not enter into any agreement with the people of this land, and that you shall throw down their altars. See, God said, I will not break my covenant with you. But on the other end of that covenant, the children of Israel had a part as well. And it was that they were going to go into the land, because where we are in Judges right now, this is after Joshua has died, and now the children of Israel are wondering, okay, now, Moses is gone, now Joshua is gone, who's going to lead us into the promised land? And so we see that Judah and Simeon have been given the role to lead the children of Israel into the promised land, into Canaan, okay? So they get there, and God tells them that I'm going to give you the land that I swore to your forefathers, but your part is what? That you will throw down their altars, you will demolish their false gods, and you will not enter into any agreement with the people of this land. Well, then what ends up happening? Judges chapter 2, verse 3. Wherefore I said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. So God is basically saying, hey, I told you what and what not to do. And what ended up happening is that once they got into the land, okay, Judah and Simeon, they ended up seeing a man coming out of the land they were sent to conquer. And they asked him, they said, can you lead us through the land? And if you lead us through, we will not harm you. We will deal kindly with you. We'll protect you. And though their intentions may have been well, they didn't tell the man they were going to kill him. They said, if you lead us through this land, we won't harm you. But what did God say? God told them, don't enter into any agreements with anybody in this land. Wipe them all out. Conquer this land completely. Don't let anybody escape. Don't let anybody make it. I want you to go into the land and conquer it. And I will keep my covenant with you. I will not break my promise. But you must take down their altars, and you must go into the land and conquer the land that I have promised you. You must obey my voice. And they did not do that. As soon as they got ready, they entered into an agreement with a man out of Canaan land, and they were supposed to go in and conquer the land and tear down the false gods and tear down their altars. But instead, because they were being lazy, they made an agreement with the man coming out of Canaan land and said, if you will lead us through this country, this land, then we will not harm you. So what they did is, once he led them through the land, they let him and his family go. Now, mind you, their purpose was to conquer the land so that they could demolish the false gods. But what they ended up doing by entering into an agreement with this man took his family and he went elsewhere and resurrected the same gods that the children of Israel were sent there to destroy. And so God is saying, I gave you my word. I made a promise to you. I told you I was going to keep my word. But what did you do? You went in and you did what you wanted to do instead of what I assigned you to do. And because you went into the land of Canaan and you did what I told you not to do, you broke your part of the covenant. And I told you that I would give you the land. But now, because you have disobeyed me, I will make them thorns in your side, and their God shall be a snare unto you. So we see that Judah and Simeon were supposed to go into Canaan and conquer the land. God told them, I'll keep my word if you keep your end. I will not break my promise to you. But you must demolish their gods. You must conquer the land. You must make no agreements with the people of this land, because they were idol worshipers. They worshiped false gods. They had all kind of sin and iniquity going. And God wanted the children of Israel to conquer that so that he could keep his promise to the forefathers, to Moses and Joshua before them, by giving them the promised land. But because they wanted to do what they wanted to do, and they wanted to cut corners, they made an agreement with one of the very people of the land that they were supposed to conquer and take out. And so what they ended up doing was they actually ended up defeating the entire purpose of going in and conquering that land, because the family that they let live went and resurrected all of these false gods in another place. You see what I'm saying? So their disobedience, we see time after time after time. The children of Israel, they cost themselves the promised land. And how many times do we do that? How many times do we pray for things and God tells us to do something a certain way, but we think, oh, it's not gonna hurt if I do it my way, or I'll just make a little adjustment to this part of my agreement because I don't really want to do it that way. You're costing yourself your blessings, and then you on your hands and knees in your face before God. God, why is this not happening? God, I thought you said. And God is saying, I did tell you that I would keep my promise, and I did tell you I would keep my covenant, but you were disobedient. And because you were disobedient, God cannot dwell where sin is, right? And so God is saying, that would have been, yeah, I was going to keep my promise to you, but you disobeyed. And you cost yourself everything that I had, that I was going to give you, everything that I had promised you, you cost yourself. God didn't go back on it. Your disobedience is what cost you. Because once God enters into a covenant, and this is what I mean when I say that God is a covenant God, He is sovereign. He does not change His mind. He will not go back on it. Once you enter into a covenant with God, it is sealed. It is so. But when you go being disobedient and you go doing what you have no business doing, you are going back on that covenant and that agreement with God. So that's the first example we were looking at in Judges chapter 2, verse 1 through 3, okay? Now, if you will flip with me over to Jeremiah, we're going to be in Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 1 through 5. And then we're going to flip and look at Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 10, okay? So we're going to see yet again, the children of Israel could not get their lives. They couldn't get it right. They couldn't get it right. They were disobedient time after time. Even when God told them, because you didn't do what I do, or what I told you to do, you know, you've lost the land and all that, God kept giving them chance after chance after chance. So we see yet again in Jeremiah, who is it again? The children of Israel doing what they do best, being disobedient, all right? So we're going to look at it. Chapter 11, verse 1 through 5, I'm going to read. And verse 1, and the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord said, Hear ye the words of this covenant, and speak unto the men of Judah, and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Now I want to put specific emphasis right here on verse number 3. And say thou unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Cursed be the man that obeyeth not the words of this covenant. Pause. So what do we see here? What is God's repeating theme? That if you are disobedient, okay, you are the one who is bringing that, you're bringing the curse upon yourself. You're costing yourself your blessing. You're costing yourself the promise. You mitigate, or I'm sorry, you ruin the covenant and the agreement that you have with God when you're disobedient. See, because what God is saying is, as long as you're willing to trust me and be obedient and listen to me, I have it all laid out for you. I have the promised land for you, the job you've been praying for, the house that you're waiting on, the opportunity, the spouse. And as long as you are obedient to me, that promise shall be yours. But we see right here that God said in verse 3, and say to them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Cursed be the man that obeyeth not the words of this covenant. And so what God is saying, okay, once again, I'm going to keep my covenant, but if you disobey what I've set forth in this covenant, you are cursing yourself. You are costing yourself the promised land. You're costing yourself the blessing. You're costing yourself the opportunity. Verse 4, which I commanded your fathers in the day that I brought them forth out of the land of Egypt from the iron furnace, saying, Obey my voice, and do them according to all which I command you. So ye shall be my people, and I will be your God, that I may perform the oath which I have sworn unto your fathers, to give them a land flowing with milk and honey, as it is this day. Then answered I and said, So be it, O Lord. So we see right here where God has yet again made a covenant with the children of Israel to give them. Now, He's been promising them this land since Moses, y'all. The children of Israel were so disobedient, they got through Moses and Joshua, and they still didn't have the promised land because they could not get it right. They couldn't stop worshiping idols. They couldn't stop worshiping false gods. They couldn't stop with their iniquities and their sexual immorality and all the different things that they wanted to do. They couldn't quit. And we see over and over, all the way from Judges and all the way from Exodus, we see from all these books, okay, all the way to Jeremiah, they are still, that's right, Ms. Gina, they are still being disobedient. And that disobedience kept costing them the promised land. Now, God had promised them this promised land all the way back to Moses. But do you see how their disobedience continued to cost them the promise of God, the covenant that He was keeping? They done been through two on their third leader, okay? They done been through Moses. They done been through Joshua. Now, here they are, and Joshua's gone, and they done got to Judah and Simeon, and they're doing it all over again, okay? So we see in Jeremiah, God said, you know, okay, once again, I'm going to keep my promise to you, but you make sure that you tell them they better obey. Otherwise, they have cursed themselves and they have cost themselves the promised land. So we see this dialogue right here between God and Jeremiah in chapter 11, verse 1 through 5. Now we're going to flip to Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 10, and we're going to find out what happened. Okay, so basically at this point, once again, the children of Israel have disobeyed, and God said, they have turned back to the iniquities of their forefathers, which refused to hear my words, and they went after other gods to serve them. The house of Israel and the house of Judah have broken my covenant, which I made with their fathers. Therefore, we're going to look at verse 11. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape. And though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them. So I want to stick a pin in it right there too, and I want to also bring up a little, kind of a little sub note, that anytime that you disobey God, you have earned what it is that you have reaped, because God, it's not about God being domineering. It's not about God being an evil God. It's about God knowing what's best for us, and his word and his will makes our path straight. And so anytime that we deviate from that, and we become disobedient, and we become proud, and we start acting on our own, we put ourselves in a dangerous place, because not only have we broken the covenant that we made with God, but then, okay, we get into messes by being disobedient, and then we go begging God to get us out. That's not the way it goes. And we see right here that God told them in Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 10 through 11, hey, they went back to doing what I told them not to do. I promised them the promised land, and they did exactly what I told them not to do. They went back to worshiping gods and false idols. They went back to the iniquities of their forefathers, all the way back as far as Moses. And now, because they've done that, I will send evil upon them. I will send my wrath upon them. And even though they should cry out to me, just like they did in the wilderness with Moses, they will cry out to me for my help, and they will cry out to me for mercy. And I will not answer, because I specifically said from the very beginning not to do this. And what happened? Their disobedience cost them everything. And so it's so funny how I wasn't really even studying these scriptures for this message. However, this was the word that really came forth to me to bring this evening, because it's so important in this season where a lot of us are transitioning, and we're going from one season to the next, and we're believing for things, and we're praying for things. It's so important that when God brings a covenant forth with us, and he gives us specific instructions, and he makes a covenant promise to us, that we are obedient to that. And I mean in every sense of that, because if you're wanting the promise that God has for you, he's got it laid out, he's got it prepared, he's made the way, and all you have to do is be obedient. But when you get into acts of the flesh, and you get disobedient, and you get impatient, and you start trying to rush things, and you take it into your own hands, or you go back to, you backslide because living right is just too hard, and you're tired of living right, and you're tired of waiting on the promise. Anytime that you deviate or disobey the covenant that God has set forth for you, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're costing yourself everything that you've been believing for. You're costing yourself when God says, I have something for you, I just need you to wait a little while, do this in the meantime, and you say, well, God, I don't want to do that, that's not what I had planned. Well, God said, I'm going to keep my promise to you. That's not a question. I've laid it out. I have it for you. The promise is right here. I've got it ready. But I need you to follow my instructions. I need you to follow what it is I'm telling you to do, so that you can get to the promise. And so many times we deviate from God's plan, and we become disobedient, and we wonder why we don't see the covenant come to fruition. Well, what did you do? You started being disobedient. You got impatient, and you started acting however you wanted to act, doing whatever you wanted to do. You took it into your own hands, and you got into works of the flesh. You see that the children of Israel, over and over and over again, and God said, okay, your forefathers messed it up. Let me see if you can get it right. They still didn't get it right. Joshua died. God said, okay, I still have the promise here. You see that throughout the whole thing, no matter how many times the children of Israel messed up, the promise never broke. The promise never, ever, ever, ever left. God never broke his word. God never took the promise back. The promise, once God puts it forth, is there. But it is to you to see it come to fruition. God made this promise all the way back with Moses, when the children of Israel were originally in Egypt, but they couldn't get it right, and they couldn't be disobedient. So generation after generation after generation, God made each generation that same promise, and each generation messed it up. But you see, he never ever took the promise away. And that's the awesome thing about it is some of us, God made promises and covenants with our parents. And because our parents were disobedient and they didn't see it come to fruition, we are still living on that same promise and covenant today. And it's up to us to get it right in order to see it come to fruition. And we see that God... You all see what happens when you bring forth a good word and the enemy does not want it to get out. But I had already pretty much finished up. So the bottom line is that, it's usually it's always our disobedience that ends up breaking the covenant. And so if you are waiting to see a promise fulfilled, or if you are, believing or praying for something, you got to understand that God will never, ever, ever, ever go back on his word or revoke the covenant. But your disobedience is what will cost you the covenant. So you got to ask yourself, do I want what God has promised for me, because I know that he's not going to go back on his word? And am I going to stand up to my end of that covenant? Or am I going to be like the children of Israel and continue to let my disobedience make me miss my covenant and my promised land? Love you guys. Have a good evening.